The receipt curled across the supermarket floor before he even looked down. Nobody else in line noticed it, but he froze for just a second. Not because of what he'd bought, because of what had happened 20 minutes earlier. If you had walked past him right then, you would have seen an ordinary teenager buying milk, eggs, and bread. Nothing expensive, nothing flashy. You would have forgotten his face before reaching your own car. And that's exactly why his story matters. Hello, I'm Luem. If you enjoy videos that challenge the way you think about money instead of repeating the same financial advice you've heard 100 times, consider subscribing. And just a quick reminder, this video is for education and inspiration, not personal financial advice. Because before this video ends, you'll know the exact number that changed everything that afternoon, and why the number itself wasn't actually the reason. Most people think millionaires announce themselves with expensive cars, luxury watches, or giant houses. Real ones often don't. The quiet millionaire usually looks like someone you'd never notice twice. So why did one ordinary supermarket receipt become the most important piece of paper in his entire day? Most people think quiet millionaires are simply rich people who don't like attention. That isn't really what's happening. The silence isn't part of their personality. It's part of their strategy. Think about the people social media rewards. Expensive vacations, new cars, luxury watches, bigger houses. Every purchase becomes proof that they're winning. A quiet millionaire often treats those same purchases as questions instead of rewards. Will this make my life better, or just make other people think it has? That's a completely different way of looking at money. Now, go back to that young boy. He's sitting near the back of a city bus, rain sliding down the window beside him. His grocery bag rests on the empty seat next to him. He unlocks his phone for less than 2 seconds, looks at the same notification again, locks the screen, and slips it back into his hoodie pocket without touching a single dollar. Why would someone who just received $12,487.63 act as though nothing happened? Because the people who quietly build wealth usually stop seeing money as something to spend first. They start seeing it as something to protect. Ask yourself this. If that exact notification appeared on your phone today, what would be the first thing you'd think about buying? That answer tells you more about your financial habits than the size of your bank account ever could. Most people believe wealth is measured by what you can afford to own. The people who quietly keep it measure something completely different. And once you see what they're actually measuring, it's surprisingly difficult to look at money the old way again. Picture 2 trees planted on the exact same morning. The first grows as fast as it possibly can. New branches shoot out in every direction, but its roots stay shallow because all the energy goes into what people can see. The second hardly seems to change at all. Month after month, almost nothing looks different above the ground. Most of its growth is happening where nobody is looking. Then the first major storm arrives. One tree bends, cracks, and falls before sunrise. The other barely moves. Money behaves much the same way. Income is the water. The lifestyle everyone notices is the branches. The habits nobody notices are the roots. Quiet millionaires spend years strengthening roots that never appear in photographs. They don't ignore enjoying life. They simply make sure the foundation grows before the lifestyle does. Think about that young boy again. The bus reaches its stop. He steps onto the wet sidewalk, pulls his hood a little tighter against the rain, and walks past a dealership with bright lights reflecting off brand-new luxury cars. He slows down for a second, looks through the glass, then keeps walking without changing direction. Not because he couldn't imagine owning one, because he knew timing can be more expensive than price. Ask yourself something. Have you ever bought something simply because it made you feel successful for a moment? Almost everyone has. The difference is that some people recover from that habit, and others quietly build their entire financial life around it. The strange part is that the real difference isn't measured by the car someone drives. It's hidden inside a number most people never bother calculating until years have already passed. That number is called your savings rate, and it quietly tells a story that your income never can. Imagine 2 people who both earn exactly $80,000 a year. The first saves $4,000. The second saves $24,000. From the outside, they might look almost identical. They work similar jobs, shop in the same stores, and live on the same street. But below the surface, they're moving in completely different directions. The first person is building a lifestyle. The second person is building freedom. Research from the National Study of Millionaires by Ramsey Solutions, which surveyed 10,167 millionaires, found that the overwhelming majority didn't become wealthy through sudden inheritances or lottery wins. They built wealth gradually through consistent investing and disciplined financial habits. That changes the question you should ask yourself. Instead of, how much do I make? Try asking, how much of what I make actually stays with me? Now think about that young boy. He unlocks the front door of a small apartment, places the groceries on the kitchen counter, and finally looks at the notification one more time. His thumb hovers over the transfer for a second. Then he closes the banking app without spending a single dollar. The transfer changed his bank balance. It didn't change his behavior. And that's a much rarer thing. Most people believe wealth is created the day you earn more. Quiet millionaires understand it usually begins on the ordinary days when nobody is watching and nothing exciting seems to happen. The hardest part to understand isn't how money grows. It's why our own minds keep trying to stop it from growing in the first place. Here's the part that catches almost everyone off guard. Your brain doesn't experience money logically. It experiences money emotionally. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation. You buy something you've wanted for months. For a few days, maybe a few weeks, it feels amazing. Then your mind quietly resets. What once felt special becomes normal, and before long you're searching for the next upgrade. That's how lifestyle inflation begins without asking your permission. Now imagine you receive a $1,200 raise each month. You decide to spend $900 on a nicer apartment, better restaurants, and a new car payment. Only $300 is left. But if you had increased your lifestyle by just $200, you could invest the remaining $1,000 every month instead. The raise would still improve your life, but would also keep working long after payday disappeared. The math isn't difficult. Controlling the emotion is. Think about that young boy again. He's standing in his small kitchen now. The groceries are unpacked. His phone lights up with another notification advertising a limited time sale on a brand new smartphone. He reads it for a second, smiles almost to himself, swipes it away, and starts making a simple dinner instead. Nobody applauds decisions like that. Nobody even notices them. But those invisible moments quietly shape the future far more than the exciting purchases everyone talks about. Maybe the biggest financial decision you'll make this month won't be something you buy. Maybe it'll be something you decide you don't need after all. The number that surprised researchers most wasn't how much millionaires earned. It was how ordinary many of their daily choices turn out to be. The ordinary choices weren't just a coincidence. They showed up in the data. In a national study of millionaires by Ramsey Solutions, researchers surveyed 10,167 millionaires. One finding stood out more than almost any other. 9 out of 10 millionaires said they became wealthy through consistent investing over time, not through a single big break. Think about how different that is from the stories you usually hear. Movies celebrate the lottery winner. Social media celebrates the entrepreneur who sells a company overnight. Real life is usually much quieter. Quiet wealth is often built one automatic investment, one skipped impulse purchase, and one ordinary month at a time. Now go back to that young boy. Dinner is finished. He washes the single plate he used, dries his hands on a faded kitchen towel, and opens his banking app one last time. This time he taps transfer, not to buy something, to move the $12,487.63 into an investment account he'd already planned long before today arrived. The decision takes less than 15 seconds. Nobody congratulates him. Nobody even knows it happened. Ask yourself this. If nobody could ever see what you bought, would you still want to buy it? That's an uncomfortable question, because it separates the purchases that improve your life from the purchases that only improve your image. The young boy wasn't pretending to be poor. He simply refused to let one unexpected transfer rewrite years of disciplined habits. The story didn't change because money arrived that afternoon. The story changed long before that, in the quiet decisions almost nobody else ever noticed. It's easy to hear a story like this and think, that's fine if you already have money. For a lot of people, life isn't that simple. Some are paying off medical bills. Some are helping their parents. Others are raising children, covering rent, or try to recover from years of financial mistakes. There are months when saving even $50 feels unrealistic, and pretending otherwise doesn't help anyone. The point was never that everyone can save the same amount. The point is that everyone can begin paying attention to the direction their money is moving. Think about that young boy. His apartment isn't large. The furniture doesn't match. The kitchen table has a scratch running across the middle, and the couch has clearly been repaired more than once. If you walked inside, you wouldn't think you were looking at someone who could become wealthy. But that's the trap. Most people expect wealth to announce itself. Quiet wealth rarely does. It hides inside choices that look completely ordinary from the outside. Maybe that's why so many people miss it. Ask yourself this. If someone removed every logo, every brand name, and every price tag from the things around you, would your financial decisions change tomorrow morning? For most people, the honest answer is yes. The young boy never tried to look rich. He only tried to make sure that every dollar he kept had another job waiting for it. By the time other people noticed his financial success, the habits that created it had already been quietly repeated hundreds of times. Which brings us back to the supermarket, because that receipt on the floor meant something completely different than it seemed at first. When that receipt landed on the supermarket floor, it looked like the beginning of a spending story. It wasn't. It was the ending of a habit that had started years earlier. The young boy wasn't surprised by the $12,487.63 because he had already decided, long before that afternoon, what unexpected money was supposed to do. It wasn't permission to spend. It was another employee go to work. By the time he reached home, almost the entire transfer had already been moved into investments according to a plan he'd written for himself months before. The milk went into the refrigerator. The eggs went onto the shelf. The loaf of bread sat on the counter exactly where anyone else's groceries would have sat. Nothing about the apartment looked different. Nothing about his clothes looked different. Nothing about his life looked different. And that's the point. The quiet millionaire isn't the person pretending not to have money. The quiet millionaire is the person who understands that looking wealthy and becoming wealthy are often two completely different games. If you had met that young boy the next morning, you would have seen the same faded gray hoodie, the same worn white sneakers, and the same calm expression on his face. You would have walked right past him, just like everyone else did. The receipt on the supermarket floor was never proof that he had become wealthy that day. It was proof that his habits had already gotten there before his money did. Sometimes the richest thing about a person is the part nobody ever notices. The next morning, the young boy walked back into the same supermarket. The same receipt printer hummed beside the checkout. The same cashier scanned the same ordinary groceries. Milk, eggs, bread, no designer clothes, no luxury watch, no expensive car waiting outside. Nothing about him suggested that, on paper, he was already far ahead of where most people assumed he was. And that's because the transfer of $12,487.63 was never the reason he was becoming wealthy. It was the result of decisions he had been making long before that notification ever appeared. If that money had arrived a year earlier, he probably would have spent it. Instead, he invested almost all of it within minutes because his habits had already changed before his bank balance did. That's the part most people never see. They notice the money. They miss the years of ordinary decisions that quietly created it. The faded gray hoodie wasn't hiding a millionaire. It was hiding the habits that eventually make one. If you had walked past him that morning, you would have seen nothing more than a quiet young man carrying a small grocery bag through the parking lot. You would have forgotten his face before reaching your own car. But the life you can see has never been the best place to measure wealth. The life you build in private almost always arrives in public later. The quiet millionaire isn't the person who has the most money. It's the person who no longer needs anyone else to know they have it. And sometimes the loudest proof of real wealth is how little there is to prove.